Mr. Eldon, I appreciate you coming in, Jenny, but permits have been issued, contractors are mobilized, we will break ground in 6 weeks.
I know that
Sir,
too.
with all due respect, we have licensed engineers who have reviewed these plans thoroughly.
I know.
We have 3 certified engineering firms, Mr. Eldon.
I know.
We have soil reports, drainage models, 18 months of professional review.
I know.
Then what exactly are you suggesting we missed?
This.
The projections show significant growth.
Growth is good, but let's consider the risks.
We've mitigated them.
We have 3 certified engineering firms, Mr. Eldon. I know. We have soil reports, drainage models, 18 months of professional review. I know. Then what exactly are you suggesting we missed? The old man in the flannel shirt didn't lean forward, didn't raise his voice, didn't adjust his expression by a single degree. He simply looked at the drainage map spread across the conference table and tapped it once with one finger. This, Carter Baines, 38 years old, master's degree from LSU, director of the biggest infrastructure project Baton Rouge had approved in 11 years, looked at where the finger was pointing, then back at the old man. That corridor has been reviewed and approved by someone who didn't look at what's underneath it. Around the table, 2 junior engineers exchanged a glance. The kind of glance that people exchange when they've decided a meeting has gone slightly sideways and will make a good story later. Baines picked up the edge of the drainage map, started rolling it back up. Mr. Eldon, I appreciate you coming in. Genuinely. But permits have been issued. Contractors are mobilized. We will break ground in 6 weeks. I know that too. Then what would you like me to do? The old man looked at him. Fix it. Baines nodded slowly. Set the rolled map aside. Thank you for your time. The door to conference room B opens. The door closes. The meeting moves on. Carter Baines thought he had ended an awkward conversation. He had no idea he had just made the most expensive decision in Baton Rouge municipal history. And the man walking to his car alone on that October morning. Roy Eldon had been reading drainage maps since Carter Baines was in kindergarten. In 14 weeks, the ground was going to prove it, to the tune of $34 million. Here is what you need to know about Roy Eldon. Not the flannel shirt, not the worn boots, not the small American flag pin his son gave him for his 65th birthday. Who he actually was. 42 years. Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development. Roads, bridges, levees, drainage corridors, retention systems. The infrastructure that keeps a state from being swallowed by the water that surrounds it on 3 sides. He worked the I-10 expansion through Baton Rouge in the 80s. He was on the emergency assessment team after Hurricane Andrew. After Katrina, the disaster that broke an entire region, Roy Eldon worked 22 consecutive days without a full night's sleep. His reports shaped $800 million in federal reconstruction funds. His name was in the footnotes, because that is where the real work always lives, not in the headlines. In the footnotes. He retired in 2017. He did not stop paying attention. When the Riverside Commercial Development Plans appeared in the Baton Rouge Advocate that September, published as public record, the way major infrastructure projects are required to be, Roy read them, the way he read everything. Slowly. Twice. Taking notes. And on the second read, he saw it. The drainage design for Sector 4 assumed a specific soil composition, based on surface core samples taken to 12 feet. Standard practice. The problem was 14 feet. Because Roy Eldon had worked 2 miles from this site for 11 years. In 1998, he supervised a drainage installation on the adjacent parcel. At 14 feet, his team had hit something that changed the entire approach to that project. Atchafalaya clay. Dark, dense, compressible, moisture-sensitive. Clay that behaves completely differently under water load than surface samples suggest. Clay that does not appear on standard soil maps. Clay that will not show up in a core sample that stops at 12 feet. But clay that was absolutely, demonstrably, documentably there. Because Roy Eldon had hit it himself. 26 years ago. He still had the project file. Camera holds on the green accordion folder. Worn, organized, patient. And here is the engineering reality that the Riverside Development's certified reports had missed entirely. When that retention corridor filled with water, as it was designed to, the weight pressing down on an improperly understood base would compress that clay. The clay would shift. The surface above it would follow. Roy Eldon did not need a computer model to tell him this. He needed someone to listen. He tried. Called the city planning office September 22nd. Transferred 3 times. Left a message. Never returned. Emailed the DOTD September 28th. Received an automated acknowledgement. And then on October 6th, he drove downtown. Walked into conference room B with his green accordion folder. and his 1998 project file, and showed Carter Baines exactly where the problem was, exactly what would happen, exactly what needed to be done. Carter Baines rolled up the map, thanked him for his time. Roy Eldon drove home alone. Roy Eldon arrived home at 11:40. His wife Elaine was on the back porch. "How did it go?" He hung his jacket by the door. "About like I expected." She watched him. 47 years of marriage. She knew the difference between a man who was finished and a man who wasn't finished yet. "What are you going to do?" He went to his office. He wrote the letter by hand first, because Roy Eldon had always written important things by hand. Handwriting forced him to mean what he said. Then he typed it. 4 pages. Single-spaced. No vague language. No general concerns. The specific soil data from 1998. The DOTD guidelines on Atchafalaya clay subsidence. The compression calculations under full water load. And a prediction. Exactly. Dated. Signed. If the Sector 4 retention corridor is filled under current design specifications, subsurface compression will occur within the first significant rainfall event that brings the corridor to 60% capacity or above. Surface settlement will follow within 24 to 72 hours. Not a guess. An engineering prediction, backed by 26 years of documented field experience. He printed 3 copies. 3 certified mail envelopes. 3 recipients. The City Engineer's Office. St. Ferdinand Street. Baton Rouge. The Louisiana DOTD. Engineering Division. The Federal Highway Administration. Southern Region. Atlanta. He drove to the post office on Airline Highway. Send all 3. Return receipt requested. $14.73. Kept every receipt. Drove home. Told Elaine he had done what he could. She put dinner on the table. They ate. 3 letters. 3 certified mail receipts. October 7th. $14.73 in postage. About to become the most important paper trail in Baton Rouge municipal history. But right now, 3 envelopes in a mail truck. And a city with a project to build. Have you ever done everything right? Documented everything, followed every proper channel, and still been ignored? Stay with this, because what happens next is going to feel very personal. The return receipts came back within 2 weeks. City Engineer's Office. Signed October 9th. Staff Assistant M. Thibodeau, DOTD. Signed October 10th. 3 signatures. 3 confirmations. Roy put them in the green accordion folder and waited. No response from the City Engineer's Office. No response from the DOTD. A form letter from the FHWA dated October 31st Street, thanking him for his correspondence, informing him his concerns had been forwarded to the appropriate project oversight personnel. He never heard from the appropriate project oversight personnel. Ground was broken November 19th. Small ceremony. Mayor's Deputy Chief of Staff. 2 council members. Carter Baines, a photographer from The Advocate. The article next morning called it a transformative project for the city's economic future. Roy read it at his kitchen table, finished his coffee, went to his office. I looked at the green folder, then went outside and raked leaves, because it was a good day for it, and there was nothing else he could do. The calendar is moving forward. October, November, December, January. The construction site is growing in the background. Foundations poured, walls rising. The ordinary unstoppable momentum of a project in motion. The Sector 4 retention corridor was completed ahead of schedule. Carter Baines was praised at a January project review for keeping the development on budget. Roy Eldon grew tomatoes in his backyard and waited for spring. The ground held its secret at 14 feet. Patient, compressible, waiting for water. April in Baton Rouge is not a gentle month. Camera wide on a gray Louisiana sky at dawn. Gulf moisture building from the south. The Gulf of Mexico sends moisture north in heavy pulses. And when that moisture meets the warm Louisiana flatlands in April, it doesn't politely rain. It releases. April 14th started gray and still. By 7 in the morning it had made its decision. By 8:30 the Riverside Commercial Development Site was receiving 3 inches of rain per hour. The Sector 4 retention corridor, completed, operational, doing exactly what it was designed to do, was filling. Site foreman Daryl Mouton had been building things in Louisiana for 29 years. He was standing under the trailer shelter watching the water levels when his radio crackled. A crew member. East side of the site. "Daryl, you need to come look at something." "What is it?" A pause. "The ground over by Section 4. Something's happening." Mouton pulled on his rain gear and crossed the site. What he saw stopped him cold. The surface of the ground adjacent to the corridor's eastern wall had dropped. A strip 60 feet long, 15 feet wide, visibly, measurably, A crack ran parallel to the corridor wall, 3/4 of an inch wide, 60 feet long. Muddy water seeping upward through it from below. Dark water, clay-colored water. Daryl Mouton had been building things for 29 years. He knew what that water meant. Everybody off this section. Right now. Move. He grabbed his phone and called Carter Baines. Baines was on I-10 heading toward the site when the call came. He arrived at 8:52. At 8:59, 7 minutes after stepping out of his car, the ground moved. Not an explosion, not a movie collapse. Something worse. A 200-foot section of the Sector 4 retention corridor dropped 4 feet in 11 seconds. The motion was slow enough to see and fast enough to be completely unstoppable. A massive, decisive, irreversible settling, the sound of something enormous, completing a movement it had been building toward for 14 weeks. 2 construction vehicles tilted at severe angles, as the earth beneath them ceased to be where it had been. The hole that opened was 200 feet long, 40 feet wide, 7 feet deep at its center. It severed the underground utility conduit. It cracked the foundation slab of the partially built commercial structure to the east, and it severed a municipal drainage line feeding directly into the Florida Boulevard storm system. Within 90 minutes, 6 businesses along Florida Boulevard were flooded between 8 and 22 inches deep. A family pharmacy, 31 years on that street, a tax office, a dry cleaner, 2 generations in the same family, 3 other small businesses whose owners arrived that Tuesday morning to find their floors covered in murky water. Florida Boulevard closed at 10:30. Camera on the closed street. Empty, barricaded, silent. It would not fully reopen for 11 months. Carter Baines stood at the edge of the hole in the rain. His phone rang. City engineer's office. Had there been any prior warnings about this site? He did not answer immediately. He was remembering a conference room. A flannel shirt. A finger on a map. Fix it. The East Baton Rouge Parish commissioned an independent investigation within 48 hours. Dr. Patricia Arsenault, geotechnical engineer, New Orleans. 25 years of infrastructure failure analysis, post-Katrina assessments, Mississippi River levee reviews. 4 sinkholes across 3 states. Not easily surprised. She spent 4 hours on site with ground-penetrating radar. Then she went to the project files. She found what she expected. Surface core samples. 4 locations. Maximum depth, 12 feet. She turned to Brett Fontenot, the project coordinator. Any deeper subsurface analysis? No. Any technical correspondence regarding site-specific soil concerns? Brett checked the correspondence log. Went still. There's a certified mail item. Received October 9th. He squinted. Roy Eldon, retired DOTD engineer. Where is it? Brett searched. Found it. Camera on the envelope. Certified mail label. Return receipt already processed. Sitting in the general correspondence file. Never forwarded. Never reviewed. Never acted upon. Still in its original envelope. Opened. The return receipt had been signed and sent back. But the letter itself had been logged, filed in general correspondence, and never touched again. Never forwarded to the engineering team. Never sent to Carter Baines. Never read by anyone with authority to act on it. Brett handed it to Dr. Arsenault. She read all 4 pages standing at the filing cabinet. Still in her field jacket. Rain boots leaving marks on the linoleum. She read it twice. Then set it on the desk. Get me the DOTD file and the FHWA file too. Both retrieved. Identical letters. October 7th. Same date. 3 agencies. Neither had forwarded the concerns to the project team. Neither had initiated a review. Neither had responded to Roy Eldon with anything substantive. Dr. Arsenault laid all 3 letters side by side on the desk. Same date. Same content. Same precise, technically accurate, completely correct prediction of exactly what had just happened. She picked up her phone. Called the parish attorney's office. 4 words. You need to see this. Here is the number that came out of the investigation. The fix Roy Eldon asked for. The correction to the Sector 4 drainage design had a cost estimate. $340,000. Against a total damage bill of $34 million. $1 of prevention. $100 of consequence. For a certified mail letter that cost $4.91 per copy to send. That nobody read. Roy Eldon was checking on the tomato plants in his backyard on Gardere Lane when the 2 cars pulled up. City vehicle. State vehicle. One behind the other. Elaine appeared at the back door. Roy, there are people from the city here. He came around the side of the house. 4 people on the porch. Dr. Arsenault, Brett Fontenot, Assistant Parish Attorney Carol Matoyer, and Gerald Simmons from the DOTD, a man Roy had worked with briefly in the early 90s during the Levy years. Gerald Simmons looked at him with the specific expression of a man carrying professional obligation and personal discomfort in equal measure. Roy. Gerald. We need to talk about the Riverside site. I figured. Roy set the green folder on the kitchen table. Arsenault looked at it. Is that the 1998 project file? And the certified mail receipts? And the original drainage maps? And my notes from the October 6th meeting? You kept notes from the meeting? Roy looked at her. I keep notes from every meeting. Arsenault opened her folder, laid the 3 letters side by side on the table, then looked at Roy directly. The failure mode at the Riverside site is consistent, in every technical aspect, with what you described in these letters. The clay stratum, the compression behavior, the time frame. Roy said nothing. You were right, she said. Completely and specifically right. Roy picked up his coffee cup. I know. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Roy walked them through every page of the 1998 file. Every soil notation. Every calculation. Every line of his October 7th letter. And the exact reasoning behind it. He answered every question without defensiveness. Without drama. When Carol Matoyer asked if he would cooperate with the investigation, yes. When she asked if he would serve as technical expert for the formal panel, he looked at her steadily. Someone needs to make sure they understand what actually happened out there. Yes. Then yes. The damage assessment took 11 weeks. Direct structural damage to the Riverside site, $8.3 million. Remediation and proper clay stratum correction, the work Roy asked for, done belatedly at 12 times the original cost, $4.1 million. Florida Boulevard drainage system damage and 11 months of closure costs, $6.7 million. Business interruption claims from 6 flooded businesses, $2.9 million. 11 months of traffic rerouting and detour infrastructure, $4.2 million. Legal fees, investigation costs, expert witnesses, settlement administration, $7.8 million. Total, just over $34 million. Against a project budget of $47 million. Against a preventative fixed cost of $340,000. Against $14.73 in certified mail postage. $100 paid for every $1 that listening would have cost. The liability investigation found 3 categories of failure. Contractor error. The engineering firms used insufficient core sampling depth. 3 firms, $9.3 million in settlement. 2 engineering board reviews. 1 license suspended for 18 months. Administrative failure. 3 agencies received the letter, logged it, and filed it without action. The protocol was revised. Mandatory escalation now required. A change that cost nothing to implement and would have cost $34 million not to have had 6 months earlier. Project management failure. Carter Baines. The investigation found he had met with Roy Eldon, been specifically informed of the Sector 4 concerns, not documented the meeting, not forwarded the concerns, not initiated any additional review. The panel's final report used 1 specific phrase in the relevant section. A basic follow-up inquiry would have taken less than 2 business days and cost essentially nothing. Carter Baines resigned 6 weeks before the final report was published. He found work with a smaller engineering firm in Shreveport. He did not give interviews. The formal hearing was held in November. Roy Eldon testified on the 2nd day. Elaine had pressed his gray suit. He brought the green accordion folder, the handwritten notes from October 6th, the certified mail receipts, 60 people in the room, officials, attorneys, engineers, journalists. He opened the folder. He talked. The Atchafalaya clay, the compression behavior, the 1998 project file, the DOTD guidelines, the exact line in the drainage design where the error was embedded. 41 minutes. No notes. 80 minutes of questions after that. Not once did he say I told you so. Not once did he express anger. Not once did he name Carter Baines. Near the end, the lead investigator, Douglas Hebert. Were you surprised your warnings weren't acted upon? Roy sat with it. No. Why not? Because I know what a room that's already made up its mind looks like. You can see it is how people sit, how they look at you when you start talking, how they're already on the next agenda item before you've finished your sentence. Pause. It doesn't make them bad people. It makes them people who stopped asking questions before the questions ran out. Hebert wrote something down. Anything else you'd like the panel to know? Roy closed the accordion folder. 1 thing. Yes? The Tran Family Pharmacy on Florida Boulevard. They've been on that street since 1993. Lost 4 months of revenue. Let 2 employees go. They're back open now, but they're carrying debt they didn't have before April. He looked at the panel. Make sure the settlement addresses them specifically. Their name on a line item, not a general fund. They deserve to know that somebody saw what happened to them and made it a specific priority. The room was quiet. Douglas Hebert looked at the other panel members. Noted, the Tran family's claim was settled separately within 60 days. Roy Eldon walked out of the convention center at 4:48 in the afternoon. November air, cool and dry. Elaine was at the curb. He got in the passenger side. Set the green folder on the back seat. She looked at him. How was it? Done. She pulled into traffic. They crossed the Mississippi on the bridge. The river is wide and brown and certain below them, running the way it had always run. The way it would run long after every argument about who was right had been filed and forgotten. Roy looked at the river, thought about the Tran family. I hope they'll be all right. Thought about his father, working the levees south of Plaquemine. The river doesn't care what you think about it. It only cares what you built. They were home by 5:30. Red beans and rice. Roy set the table. They ate. He never mentioned the hearing again. He didn't need to. Carter Baines was not a villain. He was an educated, credentialed, professionally accomplished man who looked at a 71-year-old retiree in a flannel shirt and stopped listening before the man finished speaking. That is not a unique failure. It is not unique to Carter Baines or Baton Rouge or any particular industry or generation. It is the specific, expensive, entirely preventable failure that happens when we confuse credentials with knowledge, when we mistake recency for accuracy, when we look at the packaging and decide we already know what's inside. Roy Eldon walked into that conference room with 42 years of ground-level knowledge. He had worked this specific land, hit this specific clay, at this specific depth. His prediction was not theoretical. He was not guessing. He was a man who knew the ground, and the ground proved it. $34 million worth of proof. The people who truly know something rarely announce it. They write the letter, send it certified, keep the receipt, go home, rake the leaves, and wait for the ground to tell the truth. It always does. It always will. Here is what Roy Eldon never did. He never raised his voice. He never went to the press. He never stood outside the planning office with a sign. He went home, wrote the letter. I walked to the post office on Airline Highway, paid $14.73. Keep the receipts, raked his leaves, and waited. Because a man who has spent 42 years being right about hard things does not need to perform being right. He simply needs to document it and let the ground do the rest. There is a kind of man in this country, and you know one, or you are one, who spent decades doing something real, who earned knowledge not from textbooks but from the physical world, from soil and pressure and consequence and time, who carried that knowledge quietly, without ceremony, without anyone building a monument to it. When that man speaks, it is worth putting down the agenda. It is worth asking, what do you know that I don't? Because the cost of that question is nothing, and the cost of not asking it, Baton Rouge paid for it, in full. Before you go, I need to tell you about something that happened on a Tuesday morning on a rural property outside Knoxville, Tennessee. A tow truck showed up. The driver had a work order, an address, and the specific confidence of a man who had done this 100 times before. There was an old pickup truck parked on the property. Faded paint, rusted bumper. The kind of truck that makes people assume things about the man who owns it. The tow driver hooked it up. An older man came out of the house, quietly. No yelling. No rushing. He walked to the edge of the porch and said 4 words. I wouldn't do that. The driver didn't stop. Sir, this vehicle has been flagged for. I wouldn't do that, the man said again. Same tone. Same 4 words. The driver finished hooking the chain. The older man went back inside. He came back out 30 seconds later. He was holding a single piece of paper. He walked down the porch steps, handed it to the driver without a word. The driver looked at it. Read it. Read it again. His hand came off the winch controls, because what he was holding was not a complaint, not a protest, not a phone number to call. It was a property deed, and the truck wasn't the only thing on that deed. What was on that deed? What did the tow company do when they found out? And why did 3 separate people lose their jobs over one rusty pickup truck? That story is next, on Quiet Authority. And I will tell you right now, the moment that driver reads that deed is one of the most satisfying moments we have ever put on this channel. Subscribe. Hit the notification bell. You do not want to miss this one. We'll see you there. Quiet Authority. Because real ownership doesn't need to raise its voice. It just needs a piece of paper and the patience to let someone else read it.